sing glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem.
Hello, welcome back to Katrina's Creations Knitting Podcast. This is episode 60, and I want to welcome our new viewers. We have quite a few, and so thank you for subscribing and for joining our knitting group. And for those of you who continue to watch every week, thank you so much for coming back. And yeah, we're having a good time with our knitting bunch. If you've been watching, I just finished up the daily unboxing of the Yarn Advent Calendar. So I'm going to be showing you the final, what I've gotten so far on the blanket. And the very last bonus episode, because there was an extra skein of yarn in the bundle, that also has a tutorial for how to do the mitered square blanket. So we'll talk about that a little bit further on. You can find me on Pinterest, on Instagram, and on Facebook as Katrina Knits. And you can find me, of course, here on YouTube and on Ravelry as Katrina's Creations. And if you want to send me an email or send me a picture of a project or whatever that you want to share with everybody, you can contact me at KatrinasCreations@yahoo.com. So there's also some patterns I've designed. I will put a link to it in the little description box below, so you can check out any of the patterns. And hopefully by the end of January, beginning of February, there will be another pattern release for the shawl, which I also will show you. I showed it to you last week, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. So, finished objects. I'm wearing one. Let me roll back here so you can see it. This is the Brisbane yarn that I got in the latest Knitology box. And it's a very super chunky. It's soft, but it's not as soft as the next project I'm going to show you. But the pattern I used for this is the Christine Button Cowl. This is by Cozy Up Designs. If you watch the Cozy Up with the Stitchin' Sisters, it's a podcast. It's a lot of fun. There's 4 sisters, and they all knit. 3 of them are on there all the time. Sometimes the 4th one joins them. And they live up in, I believe it's Alberta, Canada. But they also do a lot of things with chunky knits because they sell these at craft markets, and this just happened to be one of the patterns that it's a for sale pattern, but when I got it, they were doing a special and it was free. So anyway, this is what it looks like. I'll get up close so you can see it. And the buttons are just for looks. That it actually doesn't have buttonholes or anything to deal with. It's a very, very simple pattern. And here it's got some beautiful cables in it. So this is the pink I added to it because I didn't have enough of the gray and white color yarn, and so I put another color with it. So I believe it was Juanita said I should add some other color to it, and Kathy suggested pink, so here it is. It's done. It was a very fast knit, and it feels kind of cozy and snugly soft. This is how much I've got left. So I have a good bit. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. It's not enough to make, like, you know, a hat or anything like that. It's not much because it is chunky, but that's what I've got left. And as if one cowl wasn't enough, I made a second one. Here it is. And this is yarn that I got in a Knitology box in September. In fact, it was one I wasn't overly thrilled with because it's kind of a dark coral color, but it actually, here's the buttons I bought. See if they're not white, they're like a pearl, but they're showing up really totally blown out white in the pictures. But here you can see the gorgeous cabling on it. So it's a very, like I said, it's a very easy pattern, and it was a fast knit. I knitted both of these. I think it took me 3 days between the two, about a day and a half for each. It knitted up pretty quick. I had a little bit left of this. This was 2 skeins and it was 80 yards each. This is actually much softer than this is. This is a little scratchy around my neck. Well, the pink is up around my neck. It's a little bit scratchier. The gray is a little bit softer. This, though, is super, super soft. I forget what the content is. I think it's merino. I think it's all merino. It's very, very soft. So I will pop in a picture of me wearing this because I'm not going to change right now because I'll totally mess up my hair. Which is kind of messed up anyway because I've been cleaning all day. So my hair is like stuck up in a little thingy here. There's nothing worse than scrubbing a toilet and having your hair fall in. So, you know, I always clip my hair up when I clean. And today actually is, normally when you see this, it's going to be Saturday, but I'm actually filming on Thursday because I have grandchildren coming. Yes, I will be busy on Saturday spoiling my grandchildren. My son and daughter-in-law are coming in from Ohio later today, which is why I'm filming on a Thursday, because the room that you see here is the room they stay in. So, hopefully next week I will have some footage to pop in. And, yeah, so that's why I filmed earlier, so that I don't have to, like, invade their space to record while they're here. So anyway, they are coming in. We've got a busy week ahead of us while they're here. Because I know Friday and Saturday they will be running around visiting my parents and visiting my husband's parents. And then Sunday we'll have church and we'll go to my parents' house. Christmas Eve we always go to my parents' house and open up presents, and we're actually bringing our guitars, and everybody that plays instruments is showing up with instruments, and we're going to sing Christmas carols. And actually, as a surprise to my parents and to my husband's parents, it would be their great-grandchildren, it's our grandchildren, but my parents and in-laws' great-grandchildren are going to play their instruments and play Silent Night, and then they're all going to sing Silent Night. And that's going to be their present to their great-grandparents, and I'm going to film it and then give them like a CD with it on it. So, anyway, that is their present. So, then, let's see, Christmas Day. Christmas Day is absolutely crazy because we will go to my husband's family, and then everybody comes back to our house. Well, our kids and our grandchildren all come back to our house, and we have like snacky foods and things, and we open up our gifts to each other, and then we play crazy games. We put a video on for the kids and let them like take over the living room and play whatever with their new stuff, and we sit in the kitchen, all of us adults, and play crazy games. So we usually play catchphrase. So it's sort of like password, but on steroids. It's a lot of fun. So we tend to play that when we get together as a group. So let's see. Let me go on with, I've showed you my 2 finished objects. I'm looking down at my notes because I've got lots of notes today. But I'm going to show you my works in progress. This is my Cozy Memories blanket, which if you watched the tutorial that went up on, I believe it was Thursday, you would have seen the whole blanket, but this little section right here, from the orange to well, it's kind of a coral color, from this one across here and up has been added on. I used bits and pieces of it during the tutorial. Now my blanket is a little different than most people's. A lot of people just have their miters going all one direction. My miters, I changed partway through. Mine started out that way, and then I decided I wanted it to kind of have a sunburst. So if you see my miters here, you can see that they run 2 different directions right in the center. So at this point, this is the center of my blanket, and the miters are running this direction and this direction and this direction, and then this one will go out this direction. So I'm kind of knitting it out of the order I did in the tutorial just because of the direction of my miters, because I change them. So I am now working on this quarter of it and working my way across. And somebody asked me about the yarn that I got off of eBay. The seller is really _knit_stuff. But if you want to look for it on eBay, type in sock yarn hanks, and that's the one that the very first one that shows up. That is the seller. Her name is Paula, and she actually has been watching the YouTube videos, and she has been inserting, if you read the comments down below, she's actually telling what the yarn is on a lot of the videos. Some of the yarn is Felissimo, and some of the yarn is opal yarns, and some of it is stuff she's hand dyed. So, yeah, so if you look at the comments down below and you see somebody named Paula, that is the actual seller on the eBay. So she and I have chatted back and forth a bit, and I was asking her whether she does acid dyes or if she does, you know, what dyes does she use, and she said she uses acid dyes and like cake icing dyes, which is like a paste. So I haven't braved acid dyes yet. I mean, I've dyed with Kool-Aid and food coloring, only because I tend to be accident prone, and you have to wear a respirator when you do acid dyes because you have to be careful what you would inhale. I don't think I want to literally die while I'm dying, so I haven't tried that yet because it's probably not a good mix. Me and dangerous substances is probably not good. So, anyway, this is where I am with my cozy memory blanket. This is all like a fingering weight, sport weight. Some of it's fingering, some of it's sport, some of it's sock. It's basically all lightweight yarns, because somebody asked me, is the blanket heavy? And actually it is not, because it is all wool, but it's because it's a lighter weight, it's not a heavy, like smothering type of feeling type of blanket. Of course, it's only about 4 feet across and only about 1.5 feet tall, so by the time it gets full sized, it might be a heavy blanket, but at this point in time, it's not a heavy blanket. So, and if you do order from Paula with the eBay, you can order by color lots, basically. I'm saying basically a lot today. I don't know why. I don't normally do that. But anyway, I ordered the yellow and red mix of colors because those are colors I did not have a lot of scraps of. I tend to have a lot of pinks and purples and browns, things like that. I'm just kind of getting into wearing more reds and yellows. I used to like avoid yellow or gold like the plague, and now I seem to be making a lot of things in that color. But as a result, I didn't have a lot of those colors for scrap to put into the blanket. So you can order, I think there's blues to choose from, and there's different tones of browns, and there's a kind of one that's a little bit more neutrals, and I picked the reds and yellows just because I needed those kind of colors in my blanket to kind of balance it out a little bit. So that was the color palette that I chose from. So yeah, check out her store over on eBay, and it's very reasonably priced. She ships really, really quick, and I've ordered from her twice and been very, very happy both times. So yeah, so that is the information with that. The other thing I've been working on is my sock, and I'm now totally getting why people knit socks all the time. I'm not a sock wearer except like in the house. I wear dresses all the time, so I don't tend to wear socks with my dresses. It just doesn't look really good. But I totally understand it because this is really becoming addictive. It's very portable because, you know, I can stick this in my pocketbook. And here's my sock so far. This is the Blueberry Waffle sock. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's by Sandy Turner. And we are going to be doing this sock together as a bunch, as a knitting group. We're going to start in January. So if you want to join it, you know, go out and check out the pattern to see what you're going to need. And I'm knitting it ahead of time because I've been doing tutorials for it as I go along, so that when it comes up in January, I've got stuff lined up for you all. in case you've never made socks before. But let me show this up close. Here is the cuff, and here you can see the pattern. Last week I did not put a progress keeper on this. I just completely forgot. But last week I was only one pattern into this. So I've knit all the way down here. I knit like 6 or 7 rows of this. It knits pretty quick. At the car wash. I was not driving at the time. I was sitting in the car, and we had snow earlier this week, and our car was like covered with the salt. And so my husband said, we really need to get it washed off. So while I was getting gas, I thought, well, I'll just put it through the automatic washer. Everybody else, I think, had the same idea. There was like 5 or 6 cars in front of me. So I was sitting in line at the car wash for, I think it was around 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that. So I pulled out I was like, I'm bored stiff. I was trying to find Christmas music on the radio. I couldn't find any, or I'd find one song that was good, and then the next time something really icky would come on and I'd turn it off. So I pulled out my socks and I started knitting. So let me hold this up and pull this apart a little bit. Somebody called this a broken rib stitch, and that is pretty much what this is. In fact, the Cozy Up with the Stitching Sisters, the ones that designed this cowl, one of them is knitting the same pattern, so she was talking about it on their last episode. I am knitting this with 9-inch circulars, and I love it. Apparently I can't multitask and use double-pointed needles really well. I tend to get ladders on them, and I mean, I know how to use them, I just don't use them well. So I really like these. I'm getting so I can really whip around pretty fast. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. My needle size is a little bit smaller than what the pattern calls for. I never consider myself a loose knitter, but maybe I am. I'm not sure. But the size-wise, the gauge worked better. So these are, I think it calls for 2.75 millimeter needle, and these are 2.25s. So I'm a half size smaller than what it calls for. But I like the gauge is working perfect. And this yarn that I'm using is called On the Round, and the color is Deconstructed Twinkle Twinkle. And so there it is. So that is my sock so far. So I've been working on that. Those are the only projects, because I spent a good portion of my like 2 or 3 days making these cowls and then working on the sock. So what am I going to be working on this week? Well, of course, more of the sock. I might work on my blanket a little bit. And then I have this shawl that I just finished. It still has no name. I will pick a name the end of January when this actually releases to the public. So let me look at it, because I'm showing you the wrong side. No, this is the right side. So here is the shawl. If you would like to pick a name for it, whoever picks a name that I happen to choose will actually get a free pattern. Free copy of the pattern when it is released. Don't base it on the color, because I'm not necessarily, this was my first version of it. I'm making a second version of it. It's not in gold, and it's not in gradient colors. So if you have an idea for a name for the shawl, enter it in the comments below, and I will write it down. And at the end of January, when I pick, actually I'm thinking while my daughter and my daughter-in-law are here, I might have them look through all the names or all the different names for the shawl and help me pick one. So, yeah, it's not too late. If you have an idea, you can put it in the comments down below. I do have someone test knitting this as soon as I should be, by the time you're watching this, she should have a copy of the test of the pattern for the test knit, because I just finished writing it up on Wednesday. So it was written on scraps of paper, but you know, nobody can read my writing, so I had to put it into typing, and so it has been emailed to her. So Yoka, thank you so much for being willing to do a test knit for me. And I'm actually going to remake the pattern again, just because I second guess myself all the time. So I'm going to be re-knitting the pattern as well, and I'll show you what I'm knitting it in. I'm using this yarn here. It's called Baneberry, That's the colorway, and this was a Knitology that I got in the October box from Knit Crate, and it is a fingering weight sock, 80% superwash, 20% nylon, and there's 400 yards in it. Now the pattern calls for almost a little over 900 yards, but I did have I got fuzzies from it. I do have a good bit of it left from my gold shawl, and because I'm not a loose knitter, I should have plenty. I have 2 skeins of this. I just brought 1 skein up to show you. Now, this is a funny story. When I got this, I really liked it. There's a reason that I like this. Let me show you why. I haven't knitted on this for a while, but I'm doing a second Drachenfels. But you got to see these colors. Yeah. The speckles, this part of this yarn, the speckled part, is almost identical to these. They would go so well together. This one doesn't have like quite as many speckles. It has a little bit in here. But see, the colors are almost identical. If I hadn't already started my Drachenfels, I would put this in with it. But I have this color, which also goes with this, because there's some of this same color here. But these two go together really, really well. And then there's a third color that goes in the Drachenfels, which is this purple, which also goes with all of this. Needless to say, with having a shawl in almost the exact same colors, I don't need a second shawl in this color. So what I'm going to do is I am knitting this pattern, but I'm going to use just this yarn, so I'm not going to be changing colors. I'm just going to knit it straight through. The only difference is the striping won't show, because there is some striping in this pattern, as you can see. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that interruption. Anyway, the only difference from my knitting it straight with this is that the striping that goes in between some of the sections here won't be striped. So, but that's not a big deal. So anyway, this is going to be a Christmas present, but I'm not sure for who. For next year. I'm thinking ahead. It's not even Christmas this year. I'm thinking ahead. But I do like to, when I put a pattern out, knit it at least 2 times or 3 times, you know, just to make sure that before it actually goes up for sale, just to kind of, I second guess myself all the time. I like to make sure that my patterns are very easy to read, and if you haven't looked at one of mine before, I tend to put a total stitch count at the end of every single row, because especially when you're knitting something like this with some lace in it, and it's not a hard lace pattern, they're very simple, but there's nothing more frustrating than to sit it down and forget what row you're on, and then try to figure it out. So I just find it, especially when you're knitting with a lot of open work, that it is easier if you can just count the stitches on the needle and look at the pattern, and you'll know exactly where you're at. So that's how I tend to do it, because that's how I like it. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working on this. So I have a couple projects that I've got in the works to work on the next week while the grandkids are here, because you know, in the evenings when we're home, or if they're visiting the other grandparents, great-grandparents for them. So I'll be busy doing some stuff. So, let me see, what else do I have to show you? I have acquisitions. I only have one, and it's a free one, and it's one that I saw on another podcast. I did not print this in color. I should have, so you guys could see it. It's a shawl. It's called Sacré Coeur. I didn't pronounce that very well. It's Sacré Coeur. I took 2 years of French. I didn't do well. In my class, it was, I could order off of a menu, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I took 2 years of French, and the one thing I learned to say was je ne sais pas, which means I do not know. Because if I couldn't answer anything else in the class, I had to know how to say that. So I had that phrase down really, really well. So I do know how to say je m'appelle Katrina, which is my name is, and je ne sais pas. So, anyway, this is Sacré-Cœur, and Sacré-Cœur is a cathedral actually in Paris. It means Sacred Heart, and that is like I said, it's a cathedral in Paris, and I'm thinking that this shawl is based on like some of the windows because it looks like cathedral windows. I don't know how well this is going to show up. Oh, it's not bad. It's not showing up bad. So you can see it's very lacy. And the thing I liked about this pattern when I saw, and I forget which podcaster it was that was making this, but it's adaptable to any yardage. That's what I liked about it, because I have some skeins of yarn that I really am not sure what I'm going to put them with. And I thought, well, this is something I can just, if I have an odd amount, I can just keep adding to it and still have a shawl. It is, you can use any weight of yarn, from lace to DK weight as well. So, and it says your gauge, your needles, and your beads, because there are beads on this, vary with your yarn weight. So, yeah, and you just make it as big as you want to make it or as small as you want to make it. So I thought, well, this is a nice little like standby to use up some yarn with. If I have some that are in odd sizes that I don't know what to combine them with. So that was my acquisition this week. I have a couple of pictures to insert for our show and tell. One of them, last week, I talked about Kathy's cute little, I kept calling it an elf. It was not an elf. I went and looked back, and I even wrote it in the little notes when it popped up, when I was talking about it. It was not an elf, it's a snowman. And she told me she got it off of Pinterest, so I guess the picture's up for grabs that way. So I will post a picture of it right here. I just thought he was adorable. So anyway, he or she, a snow person. So anyway, I thought he was cute. So I put that in there. And then there are some pictures of some Afghans that Bev has made. So I'm going to put those into the picture. And now I thought, and this is totally not yarn related, I've been baking cookies the other day, and I cheated this year. I'm trying to diet. I'm trying not to have too many cookies in the house. So I bought the pouch variety that you just have to like add butter and eggs to, and you get like maybe 1.5 dozen or 2 dozen cookies. I made a couple of those. So I cheated. Yeah, don't tell the grandkids it's not homemade. But the one cookie that is very popular in my family, everybody absolutely loves these cookies, except my husband. Dave doesn't care for these cookies. I don't know why, because everybody else adores these cookies. Anyway, they are a recipe that I got from my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was born in 1909. Now, she's since passed away. I asked her, well, who came up with this recipe? And she said she didn't really know. She remembered her mother making these cookies. And they're very, very simple. They've got like 3 ingredients in them. I don't know if they would be gluten-free or not. There's no flour in them. All it is peanut butter, sweetened condensed milk, and cornflakes. It sounds like a strange combination, but these things are like ooey gooey, almost like fried toasted peanut butter. I don't even know how to describe them, but they're good, and they're my favorite cookie, and they're really, really tempting when they're ice cold out of the freezer, because they're really chewy then. So anyway, from what my grandmother remembers of the recipe, she said it used to be just cornflakes and Eagle brand milk. And at some point in time, somebody in my family added the peanut butter to it, I think, or somebody along the line from somewhere added the peanut butter to it. Anyway, I thought I would share with you my secret family recipe that's not so secret, especially since I'm sticking it out on YouTube right now. So when I made them earlier this week, I actually filmed it. So I'm going to insert that if you would like to see some interesting Christmas cookies. All right, this is my grandmother's secret, not so secret recipe. So you only need 3 ingredients. So here's what you're going to need. And I have the tops open, so I'm hoping I won't spill them. You want 2 cans of sweetened condensed milk. It could be any brand. I bought the cheap stuff. And I'm doubling the recipes because all of us except for Dave really like these cookies, so I want to make sure I have plenty. 12 ounces of peanut butter, just a small jar. Any brand. I use the creamy. You could use crunchy, but I use the creamy. And cornflakes. I don't know if that's in the screen. There we go. Cornflakes. Again, any brand. And you are going to mix together the sweetened condensed milk and the peanut butter first until they're well mixed. And then you're going to put in the cornflakes. Alright, now you can see the consistency. I've just mixed the peanut butter and the sweetened condensed milk. I have a not a frying pan, I have a cookie sheet over here, and the cookie sheet is well greased. This is not for the cholesterol conscious person, because this is well greased. You're almost going to fry these cookies. Now, you're going to add, there's no real measurement for the cornflakes. You're just going to keep adding them until you get a good consistency, and I will show you in a minute what that consistency is. This is about the consistency that you want. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many cups I put in there, but it does give you a workout on your triceps trying to stir this, because it's, as you can see, quite sticky. I'm going to put this on my cookie sheet with lots of butter. You bake it at 350, and you put it on the middle rack. And you're going to bake it till just the edges are starting to turn brown. So they'll still be a little gooey when you pull them out, but they stiffen up. This is how the cookies look when they come and they're done. Let me see if I can get it close. You can see they're just slightly brown around the edge. They're still gooey in the middle, but here's what the bottom of one looks like. So you can see they're kind of toasty on the bottom, and they're still very chewy at this point, but they will stiffen up once they cool. And then they're yummy. And then lastly, I thought I would talk to you about Christmas traditions. I thought I'd share with you some of the Christmas traditions in our family over the years. When we go over to my parents, my dad always reads the Christmas story to everybody. Sometimes we have the kids act it out. Sometimes we have the kids try to tell the story. But we always tell them the story of Jesus' birth. There was always a kind of a running thing. My mother never put baby Jesus in the manger until Christmas Eve. So she would hide it somewhere around the house. And we just kind of made it into a game where we tried to find out where she'd hid the baby. So now it's kind of become a running thing. The grandkids or the great-grandkids come in and start eyeing around and looking for baby Jesus to see where he's at. I guess sort of like, you know, the shepherds and the wise men were looking for him. So we have to look for the nativity scene, the little figure of baby Jesus. Mom usually hides it in the same place, so we kind of know where it's at. But the younger ones haven't figured this one out yet. So, and then my husband and I started this thing when our kids were little. We called it Snoopy hunting. We actually drove around looking for the houses that were intensely decorated. You know, you usually could see the glow in the sky before you got to them. So that's what we tried to zero in, you know. The ones where the electric meter's just going, psh, yeah, that's what we like to look for. So my kids still like to go out Snoopy hunting. So that's what we started calling it, like Snoopy's doghouse, with all the little decorations stuffed all over it. So, yeah. Anyway, if you would like to stick around, I was going to also share a little personal message of what Christmas means to me. And I hope you have a wonderful and blessed Merry Christmas with your family. And I will see you again on, well, next Saturday. So I hope you have a great holiday. Talk to you later. Bye, guys. As an end to our video, I thought I would share what Christmas really means to me. We all love the presents and we love the decorations and the time we spend with our friends and family. But the true meaning of Christmas is so much more than that. Because we are all sinners and God is pure and perfect, we could never measure up or do enough good deeds to be acceptable to Him. We would always fall short. There was a gap in the bridge between us and God. But because God loved us and wanted fellowship with us, He came to earth in the form of a man, Jesus Christ. And in the Old Testament, once a year, during the Passover time, a perfect lamb was sacrificed to cover the sins of the Jewish people. Jesus, who was sinless, died on a cross for all of our sins. The crucifixion took place on Passover at the very time when that lamb would have been sacrificed. So Jesus, who was known as the Lamb of God, became that sacrificial Passover lamb. He not only covered our sins, but He took them away so that we could be acceptable before God. Jesus became the bridge between God and man, and the only ticket that you need to cross that bridge is salvation through Jesus Christ. And you can have salvation by acknowledging that you're a sinner, believing in what Jesus did on the cross, and asking forgiveness and asking Him to be a part of your life. God not only gave us His Son for Christmas, He gave us fellowship with Him, forgiveness, and eternal life in heaven. And those are the true meaning of Christmas.